Under the relentless Texas sun, Jake Miller's worn-out yellow Toyota Camry inched its way through the bustling midday traffic of Austin. With the air conditioning sputtering weak wheezes that echoed his tired sighs, Jake felt the weight of a 12-hour shift. Despite the long hours, his earnings displayed on the phone's screen, a paltry $87, seemed to taunt him, mirroring the series of frustrations he'd faced recently. Come on, Jake mumbled, tapping impatiently on the steering wheel while waiting for a new ride alert. His patience was wearing thin. At last, his phone vibrated with a new request, but his heart sank as he saw the pickup location, Tesla headquarters. Great, another tech guy who probably blows more on coffee than I make all day. Ride or eat tonight, he murmured, resigning himself to accept the ride. Navigating through the increasingly unfamiliar streets of downtown Austin, Jake couldn't help but reminisce about the city's transformation. The tech boom had replaced his old haunts with sleek offices and trendy eateries, like the vegan cafe that now stood where he once proposed to Sarah. A message from Sarah popped up, reminding him of the urgent need to pick up her prescription, $180 they barely had. "I'll figure it out, honey," he texted back, trying to keep his spirits up with news of their son's academic success. As Jake neared the glittering Tesla complex, he adjusted his sweat-stained collar out of habit, bracing for the judgmental glances of the well-dressed tech workers. His dilapidated AC groaned in protest, underscoring the disparity between his world and theirs. The ride's passenger, a tall man in casual attire, seemed lost in his phone, barely acknowledging Jake. Surprisingly, the destination was just 2 miles away, Morton's Steakhouse. Jake's frustration, simmering all day, finally bubbled over. "Must be nice, being too lazy to walk a couple of miles," he muttered. Despite the short distance and Jake's growing irritation, there was something oddly familiar about the quiet passenger, which he couldn't quite place. But his irritation was too great for him to care. "You know," Jake started, the filter of his speech dissolving under the heat and stress, "some folks have to really work for a living, not just tap away in an air-conditioned office all day." Still, the passenger just tapped on his phone, not responding, which only fueled Jake's growing anger. "My kid needs new shoes for school," he blurted out, the frustration evident in his voice. "Probably costs about what you're paying for this ride. But hey, walking 2 miles might ruin your $100 socks, right?" A slight smirk crossed the passenger's face, a look that tugged at Jake's memory, but he was too caught up to pause now. "You tech guys move in, drive up all the prices, and push out us regular folks who've lived here our whole lives. Did you know my property taxes doubled in the last 3 years? Do you have any idea what a taxi driver makes in a year?" Jake gestured emphatically towards his taximeter as they stopped at a red light, where he finally got a clear look at his passenger. Recognition dawned, and he felt a punch of shock. It wasn't just any tech worker he had been ranting at, but Elon Musk. As the light turned green and a horn honked impatiently from behind, Jake pressed the gas mechanically, his thoughts racing back through every word he'd uttered. "Traffic's pretty bad today," Jake said weakly, trying to smooth things over, his voice cracking slightly. Another smirk from the back seat, and Jake's stomach churned. He remembered Sarah warning him just last week how his big mouth would get him into trouble as he had argued with their landlord about the broken AC. "So, how's the weather treating you?" Jake attempted again, cringing at his awkward attempt at small talk. "About the same as it's treating you," came the quiet reply, possibly tinged with amusement. Jake forced a laugh that sounded more like a whimper. "Yeah, real scorcher today. AC's not what it used to be in this old girl." He patted the dashboard, instantly regretting highlighting his car's inadequacies. As they passed a group of kids playing in a sprinkler, Jake remembered how Tommy used to play like that before Sarah got sick and before he had to start working 14-hour days. "Left up here?" Jake asked, even though he knew the way to Morton's, desperate to fill the stifling silence. No response. Just more typing on that phone. Jake's mind raced. Was Musk already tweeting about the rude taxi driver? A single tweet could end his career. A text from Sarah lit up his phone. Don't forget to eat something. You always skip meals on long days. Tears threatened to form. Sarah, sick as she was, still worried about him. We're almost there, Jake announced unnecessarily as they approached Morton's. The restaurant's valet stand came into view, staffed by young guys in crisp vests, likely making better tips than Jake could dream of in a week. The knot in his stomach tightened with each passing second. Once stopped, he would have to face Musk and process the payment. As they pulled up to Morton's elegant entrance, Jake put the car in park, his hands trembling slightly on the gear shift. It was time to face the music. But what happened next would change everything. Jake's fingers hovered over the payment screen, each second stretching out. Finally, he mustered the courage to turn around. That'll be $12.47. His voice cracked. He cleared his throat and tried again. A soft chuckle from the back seat made his spine tingle. You know, the passenger said, most people recognize me right away. Jake's mouth went dry. Mr. Musk, I can explain. Can you? There was genuine curiosity in Musk's voice. Because I'd love to hear more about how us tech guys are ruining everything. The words weren't spoken in anger, inviting an explanation. But those words made Jake flinch regardless. His phone vibrated, likely Sarah again, wondering if he'd managed to earn enough for her medication. The irony stung. Sir, I was completely out of line, Jake said, admitting his fatigue. I've been driving for 16 hours straight, and my wife. He cut himself off, not wanting to sound like he was making excuses. 16 hours? Musk leaned forward, his interest apparent. That's hardly optimal for driver safety. Not much choice these days, Jake muttered, his old habits of frankness surfacing despite his better judgment. Tell me about that, Musk urged, prompting Jake to finally turn and face him. You mentioned property taxes, medical bills, a son needing shoes. Musk's intense gaze made Jake uncomfortable, yet it seemed to invite honesty. Was this a setup? Jake checked his phone, half expecting his rideshare account to be deactivated. Instead, he found another message from Sarah. Tommy's school had called. He needed gym shoes by Monday. Something in Jake snapped. If he was going down, he might as well be honest. You really want to know? He twisted in his seat, facing Musk fully. My wife has him's good days and bad, but the medications for the bad days cost more than our mortgage. Insurance helps, but the co-pays are crushing us. Musk's knowledge surprised him. You sold your business to pay for treatments, Musk stated, more a fact than a question. How did you? You don't seem like a career taxi driver. You own this car, not leasing it. I noticed landscaping gloves in your trunk organizer. Simple deduction. Jake laughed bitterly. Yeah, well, had my own company. 8 employees. Was doing well until Sarah got sick. The first round of treatments drained our savings. The second took the business. Now, here I am, driving people 2 miles to steakhouses where they spend what I make in a week on wine. And yes, I resent it. Wouldn't you? Jake shot back, then immediately regretted his words. No, Musk interjected, holding up a hand. Continue. This is fascinating. As they spoke, the payment screen timed out with a soft beep, but neither paid it any mind. You want fascinating? Jake's years of frustration bubbled up. My son is brilliant. Straight A's, even with everything at home. Wants to work in tech, actually. A big fan of SpaceX. But he's wearing duct-taped shoes to school. His mom can't make it to his science fair next week because we had to choose between her medication and the wheelchair repair. Every day, I drive past these giant tech campuses, watching people his age earn more in a day than I see in a decade. So you think the tech industry is the problem? Musk asked, his expression unreadable. Jake ran a hand through his thinning hair. Maybe, I don't know. Something's broken when working 16 hours a day isn't enough to keep your family afloat. What would you do differently if you had the power? Is this some kind of test? Jake asked wearily. Let's say it is. Answer the question. Thinking hard, Jake looked down at his worn steering wheel. Healthcare, for starters. No one should have to choose between medicine and food. And maybe some way for regular folks to adapt when their neighborhoods change. Training programs, small business support. Something to help people ride the wave instead of drowning. Interesting, Musk noted, pulling out his phone not to type but to read. Your wife's name is Sarah, right? And she has an appointment at Austin Medical Center every other Thursday. Jake's heart skipped. Are you? Have you been looking me up while we've been talking? I'm efficient at multitasking, Musk replied, his fingers dancing across his phone. Your son, Tommy, he's 12. Listen, Mr. Musk, whatever you plan to do, I know I messed up. My family depends on this job. Your wife's medical bills have been paid through the end of the year, Musk announced suddenly, making Jake's brain stall. What? Jake gasped, gripping the steering wheel to steady himself. And I've arranged for a mobility specialist to assess your home next week. Wheelchair accessibility is important, Musk continued, tapping on his phone. As for Tommy's shoes, what size does he wear? The world seemed to tilt sideways for Jake. Mr. Musk, I can't accept. You can, and you will, Musk insisted, his voice carrying real emotion for the first time. Do you know the biggest problem in my position, Jake? Everyone lies to me. They tell me what they think I want to hear. Do you have any idea how refreshing it is to meet someone who speaks their truth, even if it's to call you lazy and entitled? Especially then, Jake whispered, a genuine smile crossing Musk's face. Maybe a bit more tact next time, Musk suggested. The payment screen beeped again, demanding attention. Jake stared at it, then at Musk and back at the screen. None of this seemed real. I don't know what to say. Just tell me your son's shoe size, and then think about my job offer. Your what? Jake looked up, startled. Tesla's community relations department needs people who understand both sides of the tech divide. People who can speak truth to power, but also help bridge the gap between Silicon Valley and Main Street, Musk explained as he opened his door to leave. Think about it. Have your wife call my office once she's feeling better. The number's in her email. But I had just spent 5 minutes ranting about the very things I despise, Jake said, still stunned as Musk stepped out of the car. Leaning back in, Musk added, Oh, and Jake, next time someone requests a short ride, perhaps ask why before making judgments. I'm meeting a family here who just lost their father to cancer last month. Sometimes a 2-mile drive isn't about laziness. With that, he closed the door with a soft thud, leaving Jake alone with a payment screen that now felt utterly insignificant. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was an email notification, not a message from Sarah. The subject line read, Medical bills paid in full. Jake sat in the idling car, Musk's words reverberating in his mind. The steakhouse's valet attendants shot him curious glances, but he was too shocked to move. His phone continued to buzz with notifications, one email after another, but his hands shook too much to read them. This isn't real, he muttered to himself. This can't be happening. A knock on his window startled him. A valet attendant, looking concerned, gestured at him.
"Sir, are you okay?"
"You need to move the car." Jake nodded mechanically and drove away from Morton's. As he left, he caught a glimpse of Musk entering the restaurant, just a regular guy in a t-shirt and jeans who had drastically changed his life. He pulled into a nearby parking lot and finally allowed himself to check his phone. The emails were from various medical offices and insurance companies. His heart nearly stopped when he read one from Austin Medical Center's billing department. "Dear Mr. Miller, this letter is to confirm that all outstanding balances for Sarah Miller have been paid in full." A sob caught in his throat. With trembling fingers, he dialed Sarah's number. "Jake," her voice came through, filled with worry. "Is everything okay? You're not usually done this early." "Sarah," he managed, trying to keep his voice steady. "Check your email." "What? Why?" "Jake, you're scaring me. Just, please check it now." He heard the tapping of her phone, followed by a long, heavy silence. "Jake," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "What did you do?" I kind of yelled at Elon Musk." "You what?" "In my taxi. I didn't recognize him at first. I said some things, about tech people, about money." He paused, overwhelmed. "Are these emails real?" Sarah's voice trembled. "The medical bills, the home assessment. There's one here about a job interview too," Jake said. I think it's all real." He heard her start to cry, which made his own tears flow freely. "But how? Why would he?" Jake wiped his eyes, trying to focus. "He said it was because I was honest, because I didn't just tell him what he wanted to hear." A notification popped up on his phone, a deposit to his rideshare account. "Tommy's going to flip when he hears about this," Sarah said, laughing through her tears. "You know he has that SpaceX poster in his room." "Yeah, about that," Jake smiled, a sense of wonder in his voice. "Apparently, we need to get his shoe size to someone." "His shoe size? Jake, what aren't you telling me?" Before he could respond, another email notification popped up, causing Jake's heart to skip a beat. The subject line screamed, "Welcome to Tesla Community Relations Department. Interview schedule." Staring at his phone, barely able to breathe, the same parking lot that had been a scene of his despair moments ago now hosted a flicker of hope. A horn honked nearby, jolting Jake back to reality. He was still on the clock, with bills to pay, at least for now. But for the first time in years, the burden on his shoulders felt somewhat lighter. "Sarah," he said softly, "I think our luck just turned around." "Because you yelled at a billionaire?" Her voice was smiling through the phone. "No," he replied, reflecting on Musk's words. "Because for once, being too honest wasn't a bad thing." As he drove out of the parking lot to resume his shift, Jake laughed at the sheer absurdity of his day, a day that might just mark his last as a taxi driver in Austin, Texas. The Dallas afternoon sun continued its relentless assault as he sat in traffic, glancing at his phone, his finger hovering over the rideshare app, still trembling from the day's shocks. "Jake, are you still there?" Sarah's concerned voice came through. "What's wrong?" "I think I need to pull over again," he managed, his voice thick with emotion. He steered the taxi into a small strip mall parking lot next to a discount shoe store, the kind where he had planned to buy Tommy's new shoes on clearance. "What is it, Jake? You're scaring me again." He parked the car, his hands shaking. "The app just... There's a notification. Is it bad? Did they suspend you?" Jake let out a sound that was half laugh and half sob. "No, it's... Sarah, I need you to sit down." "I am sitting down, Jake Miller. Tell me what's going on right this instant." He took a deep breath, trying to steady his voice. "He left a tip, okay? Sarah said cautiously. And it's... Jake had to swallow hard. It's $110,000. The silence from Sarah was deafening. Honey, are you there? That's not possible. Check again. Maybe it's 100, or you saw an extra zero. Jake checked his phone again. The number was still there, $110,000, below a message that blurred his vision with tears, for the honest cab driver. Use it to start your own business. Just maybe ease up on the commentary. It's real, he said, his voice cracking. Sarah, it's real. And there's a message. A knock on his window made him jump. An elderly woman was peering in, looking concerned. Jake quickly wiped his eyes and rolled down the window. Are you all right, young man? She asked. Yes, ma'am, I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. Something amazing just happened. She smiled kindly. Must be quite something. You remind me of my husband when our first grandchild was born. Same happy tears. Jake, Sarah was still on the phone. What does the message say? He read it to her, his voice trembling with every word. The elderly woman, still standing there, beamed as she pieced together what was happening. Oh my, is this one of those life-changing moments, like in the movies? She asked. Jake nodded, speechless for a moment. Well then, the woman reached through the window and patted his hand. Bless your heart. Sometimes the good Lord works in mysterious ways. As she walked away, humming a cheerful tune, Jake turned back to Sarah. With this, we could fix the AC, get Tommy those real shoes, not clearance ones, and maybe even get your old wheelchair fixed properly. No more duct tape, Jake added. They sat in silence, letting the enormity of the moment sink in. It felt like a dream, the kind you're afraid to wake up from. His phone buzzed again, an email from Tesla's HR department detailing the interview process. They want me to come in next Tuesday, he read aloud. Sarah, what am I going to wear? Stop, she cut him off. One thing at a time. First, you need to finish your shift. Jake blinked. My shift. Sarah, after all this. We still need to be smart, she said firmly. Until you actually have that job, we need every dollar we can get. Remember what happened with Mike's auto shop. Jake winced at the memory. You're right, he sighed. Always the sensible one. One of us has to be, she teased. Now, go pick up your next passenger. And Jake. Yeah. Try not to yell at any more billionaires today. He laughed, a genuine laugh that felt foreign after so many months of stress and worry. No promises. Apparently, it works out pretty well. As he pulled back onto the street, his mind raced with possibilities. The tip alone was more than he'd seen in one place since selling his business, and the job opportunity at Tesla's Community Relations Department seemed almost too perfect, a chance to use his experience of being displaced by tech money to help others avoid the same fate. But before he could delve deeper into his thoughts, another email notification popped up. This one halted his heart momentarily. The subject line announced a welcome to the Tesla Community Relations Department and outlined his interview schedule. Jake sat in his car. The parking lot that had just witnessed his lowest point of panic was now a place of newfound hope. A horn honked, snapping him back to reality. He still had 4 hours left on his shift, but for the first time in a long time, he was actually looking forward to what tomorrow might bring. His next pickup was back at Morton's, the same place where his life had taken a surprising turn. As he arrived, he spotted Elon Musk emerging with a small family dressed in black, the family he had mentioned earlier, the ones mourning their father. Musk was kneeling to speak to the youngest child, a small gesture that brought a smile to the young face, likely the first in a long time amidst their grief. Maybe we're all just trying to figure things out, Jake murmured, remembering the words of the young programmer he had spoken to earlier. His actual passenger, a businessman in an expensive suit, entered the cab and barely acknowledged him. In the past, this might have irritated Jake, but now he just wondered about the man's own story. Yet, the true test of Jake's new perspective was about to unfold. As he drove through Austin, his mind wandered back to the $10,000 on his screen, the amount he had to sell his landscaping equipment for last year when Sarah's medical treatments intensified. His phone buzzed again with a text from Tommy. "Mom's crying, but she says they're happy tears." "Dad, what did you do?" A lump formed in Jake's throat, wondering when was the last time Sarah had shed happy tears. "You okay there, buddy?" his passenger inquired, noting Jake's emotional state through the rearview mirror. "Yes, sorry, just having an unusual day," Jake replied, managing a chuckle. "Good unusual or bad unusual?" the businessman engaged, setting his phone aside. "Good, definitely good. Life-changing kind of good," Jake answered, his spirits lifting. "Those are rare," the man remarked, genuinely interested. "Want to talk about it?" Over the next 10 minutes, Jake shared his incredible story, each retelling making it feel even more real. "Wait, you actually told Elon Musk to his face that he was lazy?" The passenger leaned forward, intrigued. "In my defense, I didn't know it was him at first," Jake explained, the passenger bursting into laughter at the revelation. "That's actually amazing. And he offered you a job interview?" The man clarified, impressed. "Not exactly the same thing," Jake corrected, but the businessman shook his head in admiration. "You know what? Cancel my next ride. I want to hear more about this," he insisted, intrigued by Jake's perspective. Jake glanced at him, unsure. "Sir, I couldn't possibly. I insist. Consider it research. I'm actually on the board of a tech startup, and we've been discussing community impact initiatives. Your perspective could be valuable," the businessman explained as he introduced himself as David Chen from Green Space Technology. For the next hour, they drove around Austin, discussing the city's transformation and Jake's thoughts on community and business. "What kind of business would you start?" David inquired after Jake mentioned potentially restarting his landscaping business, but with a focus on helping older residents and employing local youth. David was enthusiastic, nodding approvingly. "That's exactly the kind of community-minded business model we've been looking for. Here's my card. After your Tesla interview, give me a call. We might have some contracting opportunities for you." Overwhelmed, Jake accepted the card. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll call. And say you'll keep being honest with rich people in taxis. It seems to be working out for you," David joked as they both laughed, sharing a moment of genuine connection. As Jake dropped David off, the rest of his shift felt different. Each passenger wasn't just a fare, but a person with their own story, struggles, and dreams. His last ride of the day was helping an elderly woman, Margaret, with her groceries, something he might have not done before. As they drove, she shared her own challenges with living in an increasingly expensive Austin, sparking another business idea for Jake, a service to help people like Margaret stay in their homes affordably. As he concluded his shift, thinking about all the possibilities ahead, his phone buzzed one last time. It was Sarah, excitedly waiting for him to come home and share the day's unbelievable events with Tommy. Reflecting on everything, Jake knew that despite the $110,000 tip and the job opportunity, the real change was in how he now saw his role in the community and the potential to make a real difference. But Jake hadn't even noticed. "On my way," he typed back. "Love you. Love you too." And Jake, "Yeah, thank you for being you, even when being you means yelling at a billionaire." Jake chuckled as he started his car for the drive home. The same oppressive Dallas sun from earlier that day now bathed the sky in stunning shades of orange and pink, signaling a beautiful close to an extraordinary day. But the day's biggest surprise was yet to come. Jake pulled into his driveway just as the sun's last rays disappeared from the Texas sky. His home, with its slightly unkempt lawn and peeling paint, no longer seemed like a burden, but rather a beacon of new beginnings. Before he could even kill the engine, the front door flew open. Tommy burst out, still in his school uniform and those duct-taped shoes that had unwittingly sparked much of the day's events. "Dad, Dad, what happened? Mom won't tell me anything. She just keeps crying and smiling, and it's weird." Jake, stepping out of the car, laughed and said, "Hold on there, buddy. Let me at least get inside first." Sarah appeared in the doorway, leaning on her old wheelchair, tears evident in her eyes. "I still can't believe it," she called out as he walked up. "I've checked those emails 20 times. They're real, Jake, all real." Tommy was nearly buzzing with excitement. "What emails, Dad? You promised to tell me. Was it someone famous?" Mom said it was someone famous. Kneeling down to Tommy's level, Jake noticed how the boy tried to hide his worn-out shoes. "Well, buddy, you know that SpaceX poster in your room?" Tommy's eyes widened. "No way. The guy who runs that company, he was in my taxi today." "Elon Musk was in your taxi?" Tommy's voice could probably be heard blocks away. "The Elon Musk? The one who makes the rockets and the cool cars?" "Tommy, breathe," Sarah chuckled, wiping away tears. "Let your father tell the story." They moved inside. The house was still sweltering. The AC had failed again. But that night, it hardly seemed to matter. "First things first," Jake said, pulling out his phone. "What color Nikes did you want?" Tommy's jaw dropped. "For real? Like, for real? And maybe some new school clothes while we're at it." "But how?" Tommy looked bewildered, glancing between his parents. "You said we had to wait." Sarah squeezed Jake's hand, encouraging him. "Tell him, honey. Tell him what happened today." So Jake recounted the tale, how he didn't recognize Musk at first, his rant about tech workers, the moment of dreadful recognition. With each detail, Tommy's eyes grew wider. "You yelled at Elon Musk," he gasped. "Dad, he's like the coolest person ever." "I wouldn't say I yelled," Jake began. "You kind of did," Sarah interjected with a smile. "And he wasn't mad." Tommy was on the edge of his seat. Did he call security? Did he use his Iron Man suit? Jake chuckled. "No Iron Man suit. Actually, he liked it. Said I was honest." "Then what happened?" Jake showed Tommy the tip notification on his phone, his son's face cycling through expressions as he took in the amount. $10,000, Tommy whispered, awestruck. "That's like $1 billion. "Not quite that much," Jake laughed. "But it's enough. Enough to fix Mom's wheelchair properly, enough to get the AC working again, enough to maybe start something new." "What do you mean?" Sarah leaned in. "Your dad has a job interview at Tesla," Tommy squealed with excitement, which probably alerted the neighbors. "Tesla? Like, with the cool cars? Can you bring one home? Can I tell my friends?" "Slow down there, champ," Jake cautioned. "It's just an interview, and it's not for building cars. It's for helping people who might be having a tough time, like we were." "Like Billy's family?" "They had to move away because their rent got too high," Tommy noted solemnly, his young face serious. "Yeah, buddy, like Billy's family. Maybe we can help make sure other families don't have to move away," Jake said, his voice tender. "But what about your taxi? Don't you need it for the bills and Mom's medicine?" Tommy inquired, worry creasing his brow. "That's another surprise, baby," Sarah chimed in, prompting Jake to show Tommy the medical billing email on his phone. "All outstanding balances paid in full, Tommy read slowly, processing each word. Dad, does this mean? It means Mom's medicine is paid for, all of it, for the rest of the year, Jake confirmed, a wave of relief washing over him. So, we don't have to worry anymore? Tommy looked between his parents for confirmation. We still have to be careful, Sarah noted. But no, baby, we don't have to worry like before. Tommy threw his arms around Jake, then reached out to pull Sarah into the hug too. They sat there, a family united, the weight of years lifting from their shoulders. Can we get pizza? Tommy's voice muffled against Jake's shirt. Jake laughed, his heart light. Sure, buddy, any kind you want. With stuffed crust. Tommy's hopeful voice made Sarah tease. Don't push it. But Jake was already nodding. Stuffed crust it is. Hey, while we wait for delivery, want to help me look at some business ideas? Tommy sat up, intrigued. What kind of business? Well, remember how I used to have the landscaping company? I was thinking maybe we could start something like that again, but different this time, Jake explained, sharing his ideas about helping older residents, teaching local kids the trade, creating jobs in the community. So, we'd be helping people like Mr. Musk helped us? Tommy asked, understanding dawning. Exactly like that. But can I help after school, maybe? Sarah ruffled his hair. Let's get you those new shoes first. Then we can talk about an after-school job. The doorbell rang. Probably the pizza. But before Jake could get up, Tommy grabbed his arm. Dad! Yeah. I'm really glad you yelled at Elon Musk, Tommy said, a grin spreading across his face. Jake laughed, warmth spreading through him. Me too, son. Me too. As they gathered around their small kitchen table, sharing stuffed crust pizza and planning for the future, Jake's phone buzzed one last time. Another email from Tesla HR. Interview confirmed for Tuesday, 10 a.m. Dress code. Business casual. And Mr. Musk had added, don't worry about a suit. Just bring that honest perspective. Sarah smiled through fresh tears. You know what this means? What's that? Jake looked at her, anticipation in his eyes. You're going to need some new shoes too, she said softly. And as their son excitedly planned which Nikes he wanted, as Sarah smiled more than she had in years, as the weight of unpaid bills and impossible choices finally lifted from his shoulders, Jake Miller, taxi driver, future Tesla employee, and possibly the only person to ever benefit from yelling at a billionaire, realized something profound. Sometimes life's biggest blessings come from our biggest mistakes. And sometimes, just sometimes, being too honest isn't a fault at all. The next morning, Jake woke early, still trying to process everything that had happened. The sun was barely peeking through the window when he checked his phone. The tip was still there, the emails were still real, and a new message from David Chen at Greenspace Technologies waited in his inbox. Can't sleep. Sarah wheeled herself into the kitchen, looking more rested than she had in months. Just making sure it wasn't all a dream, Jake admitted, starting the coffee maker. Well, if it is, we're both having it, she smiled, holding up her phone. The medical center had just called. They wanted to schedule her next treatment, saying everything had been taken care of. Tommy stumbled in, still in his pajamas. Can we go shoe shopping today? Please. Jake checked the time. Don't you have school? It's Saturday, Dad. Is it? Jake laughed, losing track of time after the whirlwind of yesterday. As they sat eating breakfast, not just coffee and toast, Jake's phone rang, an unknown number. Mr. Miller, this is Jessica from Tesla HR. I know we scheduled your interview for Tuesday, but Mr. Musk asked if you could come in today instead. He's particularly interested in your ideas about community assistance programs. Jake nearly dropped his phone. Today. But dress code is still casual, Jessica assured him. Mr. Musk specifically said, Let him be comfortable. We've seen him at his most honest already. Sarah watched him intently. When he hung up, she didn't even need to ask. "Go," she said. "Tommy and I can handle shoe shopping on our own. But Jake Miller, if you pass up this opportunity, I will personally wheel myself down to Tesla and take the job instead." Tommy giggled. Mom would be awesome at Tesla. That she would, Jake smiled, kissing her forehead. And as he got ready for what might be the most important meeting of his life, Jake realized something else. Sometimes the best turns in life come when we least expect them. And sometimes being ourselves, even at our most brutally honest, is exactly what the world needs. But that's another story for another day.